Um, Good evening. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for the Vail School District Governing Board's regular meeting, December 6th, 2022, and I will call the meeting to order at 7:03. If you would join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is approval of minutes, November 15th, 2022. Consideration of approving the minutes from the regular governing board meeting on November 15th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Tippett moves.
Second.
Mr. Aiken seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is staff, student, and community recognitions. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson and members of the board. We're going to begin our staff, student, and community recognitions with a special performance this evening by Rincon Vista Middle School students William Rarbosh and Jackson Arney. Thank you both very much.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Set the perfect mood.
Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you.
awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes and Mom and Dad, for bringing them out and setting the right tone for our meeting this evening. We have a few other recognitions. Up first is Miss Margaret Stewart, followed by Miss Heather Stow.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz, Ms. Anderson, and members of the board. It was really hard for me to choose who to recognize today because I haven't been to the meeting for a while, and plus giving our standing in the state. It was very hard to not just recognize everybody, but I do have some people that I specifically would like to recognize. I would like to recognize Heather Deal and Jared Colby. They do our Odyssey of the Mind at the middle school, and I don't know if you've ever been involved with that, but it's very open-ended. It involves glue sticks, saws, nails, spray paint, and other sort of things that I normally don't want to put in middle schoolers' hands, but Mrs. Deal and Mr. Colby do great things, and it's really a great opportunity for the kids to do open-ended projects. I'd like to recognize Brienne Brace for organizing our turkey trot. So we had 600 middle schoolers all up on the field rotating in these little activities. And so even the 8th graders were not above holding hands and threading a hula hoop through their bodies and back. And so that was a lot of fun. And then I wanted to recognize Marianne Steer. She is one of our ELA teachers in the 7th grade. And so I was in her classroom the other day, and she had a chair and she was dressed up like an innkeeper. She made all the kids sign in when they came in the room, and she served them tea and cookies and read from her chair an Edgar Allan Poe story. And they were just sitting there just listening without any movement. It was fun to see. And then I wanted to recognize Mrs. Holsworth and Mrs. Evans, who did our canned food drive. And so we had a goal for everybody to bring in at least one can, and we met our goal. We had, I think, 1,200 cans, which may not be a lot for some schools, but it was a lot for us. And then I wanted to recognize Lisa Locke, who is our inclusion teacher, and she operates the Jaguar Bites store. And the kids all make little cookies and cakes, and then in the morning they sell them, and they have a little cash register, and they have so much fun with it. And then all of our kids, our Gen Ed kids as well, get to just experience and interact with and benefit from this business that they have. So I wanted to recognize all of those folks. And then again, I just wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Anderson, and thank you to Mr. Aiken for all their service and for making it possible for me to say that we have the best board in the state. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart. Mrs. Stow.
Members of the board. I'd like to do some recognitions on behalf of my department. The first one, Miss Ginny Graves. She has 2 roles. One of them is our Vail Pride Day support specialist. And she's currently working through 3,000 nominations for support staff teacher and rookie of the year. So I just want to acknowledge her for all the time and the heart that she takes into sorting those nominations to the right categories. She has such a heart for this, just to make sure that every staff member gets the nominations that they deserve. And she's just been touched by so many of them. I just wanted to share one that a crossing guard from Sycamore received 96 nominations by staff and students and parents. And so I just cannot, I hope that we get a video of that crossing guard opening that envelope. It's probably gonna be about this thick with all the nominations. So I just want to thank her for all the hard work that she's putting into it. Her other role is our check and connect coordinator for the district. And so she had her first training on November 17th. And Check and Connect is a structured mentoring program that she's creating from the ground up that really helps to support our disengaged students. So we have community members, we have retirees, faith leaders, administration and teachers, all in that training, ready to start in the next couple of weeks supporting students. We're piloting at 3 different sites. We're piloting at Cienega, Corona Foothills, and Micah Mountain. She has just literally built this program from the beginning, and it's so exciting to see it almost launch, and I can't wait to see the impact that her work will have on our students. Next, I'd like to acknowledge Peggy Benson-Runyon. She's our Community Connections Coordinator, and she hosted a PTO PTSA luncheon last week. She got our presidents all of our current PTO and PTSA presidents together from across the district and just made them feel valued and supported. She's just has such a gift for that. She's helping to align arrows across processes and then just give them time to connect. I know that Mrs. Tippett got to be a part of that meeting, and it was just wonderful to see that first meeting happen, and Peggy's going to plan to continue those. So I just want to acknowledge her for all of her work around that and having the vision to know that connection needed to be made that wasn't there. Peggy is also very much involved in our Vail Pride Day efforts and has been leading the way in building sponsorships for the event. And she's already brought in, along with a lot of help from Mr. Tate, who's here today, over $50,000. And it just speaks volumes to the relationships that she built in the community and the trust that she's built with our businesses. It also speaks volumes to our businesses' willingness to invest in our schools, in our events, and in our district and in our students. So I'd like to just thank her for spearheading that. Amanda Cook, our lead counselor, she has been working hard since the beginning of the school year to grow our prevention team, which lead our suicide prevention efforts. She now has a representative from every middle school and high school trained in QPR. And so we're just really excited about her ability to continue to put effort and time into that framework. They are focusing on our middle schools this year with refreshers in both elementary and high school. So I just thank her for all that, the effort and attention. And then also we had come to you a few months ago with approving all of our character education programs. And since then, Amanda has been working to get all of those implemented across our sites. There's been a lot of training and implementation planning with 7 mindsets, and that's almost at its final stages. And then Character Strong and Caring Schools are all up and going. So she's just taken that and run with it since we've last connected with you, and really grateful for those efforts. Jill Wells, our Family Resources Coordinator, just want to acknowledge her. She did a McKinney-Vento clothing shopping day on November 12th. McKinney-Vento are our homeless students, and so she brought them all to Walmart, a wonderful partnership there. And from 9 to 11, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., Jill brought in a ton of volunteers, and they all came alongside our students and their families. They got to spend $150 on new coats and jackets, and it was just Jill's vision and connections in the community that helped to make that event happen and just give those extra support to those students. She's also been in the midst of coordinating hundreds of adoptions of Angel Tree and connecting families with food baskets as well. So it's just wonderful to have her in this role, to be able to come alongside our families all times of year, but it's just even more special around the holidays. And lastly, Sarah Bates, our lead counselor, she's in the midst of planning and coordinating professional development in January for all of our 22 sites around Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions. So she's just done an incredible job at spearheading those efforts and making sure that continues to be a priority and effort and aligning arrows across all of our sites. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Snell. Have one other district-wide recognition. I'd like to recognize Vail Academy and High School student Karimat Mustafa. She recently was deemed the winner of ASU's 2023 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Student Contest, essay contest. The theme was Every Story Matters, What's Yours? Karimat will be celebrated on Thursday, January 19th at ASU. That's all we have this evening for staff, student, and community recognitions.
At this time, the board, this is called to the public. At this time, the board may consider and discuss comments and concerns from the public. Those wishing to address the governing board on items not on tonight's agenda may do so at this time. Speakers are requested to hold their comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Arizona Open Meeting Law, board members may not respond, comment, or ask questions of speakers regarding issues not on the agenda. And we have 3 individuals who would like to speak on issues not on the agenda, and the first one is Cheyenne Lewis.
Hi. I had a couple questions about Manga, the new app at Siena High School. I read an email that my teacher showed me because I'm in a journalism class about the cost efficiency. How is the cost efficiency like equal to that? Because I was reading up upon it and it's about no, you're fine. Sorry, let me pull up my notes. It's about 1,300 cost a year. That's what they told us at the beginning, and at least 4,200 a year. How is that cost efficient for our school?
The rules of the call to the public, we cannot answer questions.
Oh, yeah.
I think Mr. Cruz can get the information if you want to go through the questions you
Yeah.
have. And he'll be happy to get the information.
Yes.
Another one was, students were also concerned about the tracking of the app. It said on the app that it tracks your location outside of school. That was also a concern with teachers, students, and other staff at the school. Also had another question about why would it be necessary at the school? And wouldn't this invade the personal privacy for the students and the other staff if it tracked? And why not put some of the money towards the school lunches, the water pressure in the bathrooms, the cleanliness of the bathrooms, and or teacher salary? That's all.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Lewis, Miss Lewis, if your contact information's on there, I will make sure to reach out. Okay, thank you.
And the next individual is Mark Tate. Mr. Tate.
President Anderson, Superintendent Ruth, the governing board members. Just wanted to share with you tonight an example of where education is a community effort. Promise it's the last reference to the diaper drive in 2022. But we wanted to celebrate Sabano Community School for their activities in the diaper drive. They really took it upon themselves to make it an event this year. They went ahead and collected enough diapers that averaged 84 diapers per student. So we wanted to find a special way to kind of celebrate what they did this year. So talking with Karen Foley, general manager at Galaxy Theater, I asked if they had a theater or two that would be available to show a movie for the students. And so she offered us 2 theaters, one for the younger age and one for the older age to attend a movie. They picked, students selected the movie Soul. And so they were able to see that through their CPA or their PTA organization, and community members. They were able to purchase a popcorn and soda treats for each of the kids. So wanted to just briefly show you a couple of pictures and then really just say thank you to Karen Foley at the Galaxy Theater, Andrea Garbett, the school coordinator, who said, we may be small, but we sure can make an impact. And 3 bus drivers, Katrina Ramirez, Renee Van Alstein, and Trish Vega, for taking on the extra duty of getting the students to the Galaxy Theater and back to the school safely. So again, that's the thank you to and then Hope Sains. But here's the kids all lined up. They met there at 9:30 in the morning, and so theater wasn't open yet. The kids were able to line up, pick up their treats, and then head off to the theater. That's the picture of the 3 buses as it pulled up from the theater. And then finally, they did a group photo. So several of the staff members came as well. And exciting was 112 out of the 116 students made the trip. That was special. But again, I think it's a great example of where education is a community effort. Galaxy Theater, as well as the school, met a need for diaper drive. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next individual is Daniel Lewis.
There's a lot more context if I came up before my daughter, but that's all right. Ladies and gentlemen, I come here today as a concerned parent to hopefully get the app Minga from continuing to roll out in the VUSD. George Santanea said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Those words speak to me when it comes down to this app being in our schools. Minga is a third party based out of Canada. It is set to provide things like digital ID, hall passes, etc. I'm not sure about the communication aspect yet, but based on what I've seen from my daughter's profile, it looks like Facebook. It can also be used to communicate with students and faculty. At first glance, it seems all fine and dandy. However, has anyone considered the possible risk you will pose to students with this app being a part of their lives? Now, I think I got the pages wrong. I apologize. Anywho, I guess I'll just wing this. With this app, we've all been around long enough to know many apps around us really do invade our privacies. And we don't do anything about it until after the damage has been done. Why should we have another app, specifically an app that is not tried and tested? We have put so much faith into this. Bob Koning from Cienega assured me that this was safe and secure, but he's only afforded me copy and pasted statements that I can read on the Minga website. So how much does he really know? There's been a lot of contradictions that I found on the terms of service and the privacy policy. Minga states in their privacy policy that they may share information with other third-party companies to moderating and validating user-generated content. So these other third-party companies are set to dictate to what our kids say and cannot say. Now, some of these companies, actually all of these companies, they're all working on developing AI and API. IBM Watson, for example, is a third party that Minga shares information with. IBM Watson is AI development. So what does generating a digital ID have to do with AI building? It doesn't make any sense. Looking at some of the other companies, they moderate hate speech, but upon looking at their site, Donald Trump is hate speech. Simple as that. How can I trust Minga or anybody to make sure that my kid's information is safe? Can you guys guarantee me that? Probably not, because Minga takes themselves out of the equation in their terms of service. It's as simple as that. If there's any data breach, sorry, you paid for our service, no refunds. I just don't understand. An app that could be susceptible to hacking could really put our students in a vulnerable position. Now, I can sit here and be told it's not going to happen, but I know it can happen. And the other thing that I have an issue with, if they're supposed to develop digital IDs, are they supposed to bring their Chromebooks to the school dances or sporting events to show themselves to get in? Well, probably not, because most of these kids are gonna be, I don't want to say dumb enough, but they don't understand. They're gonna download it on their phone. I've gone through the terms of services. I've gone through the privacy policy. There's a lot of contradictory statements, and I just don't think there's been a proper risk assessment done when considering this, especially since this thing's only been rolled out in about 5 California high schools. And by the way, the company name that owns Minga is called Change Gamers Inc. What is that doing for our students? I just feel like this is a way to desensitize our kids to what's happening around us. And here's your new ID. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Lewis, Mr. Carney will get you contact information. We'll get a hold of you. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on items not on tonight's agenda? Okay. Is there anyone present that would like to speak on items on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one stepping forth, I will go ahead with Superintendent's report. Mr. Caruth.
Yeah, thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. My superintendent's report is going to be a little bit different this evening. This is the last board meeting in a long tenure of honoring 20 years of service, board service from you and Mr. Aiken. And I just wanted to take a moment and honor that. We had a nice study session earlier this evening, talking about transitions, board transitions, and your time on the board, and sharing those stories with our leadership staff and Ms. Anderson and Mr. Buster. But it's also worth noting in our public meeting this evening about your service and what that means. And to recap just a moment, leadership matters, and how you both have conducted yourself respectively at the board level, both in public meetings and perhaps even more importantly, in private settings, has set an example for me, has set an example for our leadership team, has set an example for our staff and our broader community. And you have done that work selflessly, and you have done that as community volunteers. But I think most importantly, you have done that with the heart of a parent and with young people of our community in mind and their parents in mind. So I just want to review a few things. I began, my first memory of working with Mr. Aiken came around the time of 2005 as we were looking to plan Sonita Valley Elementary School. And Mr. Aiken was simply a dad at that point who wanted to get involved in his children's education. And he stepped forward and helped me chair the development process for Sonita Valley Elementary School, and shortly thereafter, Rincon Vista Middle School. Both of those schools have taken shape and are anchors in their respective community and anchors in Mr. Aiken's neighborhood. And what I love about that process is you bring a group of community members together, neighbors, who we start that, and by the end of the process, you become friends and lifelong friends because you've shared something challenging and rewarding that will be there long after we are all gone. 50 years from now, those schools will still be serving our community. I also have a memory of you and your wife, Nicole, sometime in that period, those 2005, 2006, 2007 years, we were going through the recession, and we needed somebody, before we had Vail Parent Network or any of those other things, to go up and advocate at the legislature when Senator Tim B, President Tim B, who was our representative, was there, and you and Nicole volunteered, and we all went up together. And while you have been serving this community as a board member for the past 8 years, I know your family has also been serving, and that has been, that is a shared good and shared sacrifice for them as well. And I just want to honor your wife, Nicole, and your 3 daughters, McKenna, Sophia, and Molly. And in your time period here, we have the Vail School District has been at the top or at the very, very near the top of performance of all public school districts in Arizona for the entirety of your tenure. You have also, if you weren't involved directly with the construction, we also built a number of other elementary schools, including Esmond Station K-8 School, Copper Ridge Elementary School, Micah Mountain High School, of which you were deeply involved as a planning member, and our Vail Inclusive Preschool at Micah Mountain High School. So thank you for your service. Ms. Claudia Anderson. I met you also similar time frame, maybe just a smidge earlier. I knew you actually first through your husband, Eric, and serving with him on planning committees. I think it was that same respective planning committee he served on at Sonita Valley Elementary School, because we were building what would have been the second elementary school that was in your neighborhood. The first was Cottonwood Elementary School, of which you both, which you sent your 2 children, Sean and Sarah. And then I came to know you through the Vail Community Action Board, which was a grant that we received to help develop services in our community that were an umbrella between what we were able to provide as a school and what was lacking in our community. And you chaired a subcommittee on trying to bring mental health services to our community at a time when we had no mental health services. That was the school, or you had to drive 40 minutes into town to receive services. And then subsequently you became the larger chair of the Community Action Board, which by the end of its time period really served as a broader community organization that helped look at things like regional planning, including transportation and other necessities that kind of then segued into what's become the Southeast Regional Council and other things. And then you were encouraged by your good friend Ann Gibson to run for the board as she stepped away. And you too have served on this board for 12 years at a time period when the Vail School District has remained at or near the top of all performance of school districts across Arizona. And you too have seen the development and have either participated in or have been a part of this board that has overseen a number of schools, including in 2010, the creation of Vail Academy and High School K-12 school. You helped lead us through a recession at the board level, which was incredibly challenging and difficult. In 2011, the construction of Savannah Middle School. 2012, Vail Blended Learning. 2012, Andrada Polytechnic High School. And then with your board colleague, Mr. Aiken, Esmond Station, Copper Ridge, Micah Mountain, and VIP at Micah Mountain High School. And you too have done this as a community volunteer. You too have shared that sacrifice with your family, in particular your husband, Eric, and your two wonderful children, Sarah and Sean. So to both of you, I just want to acknowledge your time and your service and know that the imprints of your work will live on literally in stone long after we are all gone. But perhaps the most important imprint that you will leave behind is the imprints on our hearts and the imprints on how we treat each other through the models that you have shown us. And with that, I would like to present you with a couple of gifts. Smaller than a rocking chair. It will spin and you can reflect on your time and service in Vail.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
That's all I have for my superintendent's report.
Okay, we'll go to the board reports now. Does anyone have any board member have a report they would like to present at this time?
I have one. I had the opportunity to volunteer to help with the spelling bee out at Desert Willow Elementary School. I signed up for a terrible job. I had to ding the bell when they got it wrong. I don't know what I was thinking there, but I just really appreciated each of the kiddos' heart in getting up there and literally challenging their fears, almost in tears, just to be standing on the stage in front of their fellow students and some of the parents that had come to watch. And then to know that, you know, they could possibly make a mistake in front of that group. And how willing they were able to do that. And I just really admired their courage and their spelling abilities in many cases. And so I just wanted to recognize Naima F., third grade at Desert Willow, for being the third grade champion there, and Isamar S., the fourth grade champion, and Araceli F. for being the fifth grade champion at Desert Willow. And that was a lot of fun. And thank you for inviting me to participate. I also had the opportunity to have a reality check lunch at Old Vail with 4 of our staff there, and it was incredibly deep. The feeling in the room was just really trusting and hoping, and we shared some hard life things and some hard work things, and I just really appreciated their willingness to just open their hearts to us in a situation that maybe could feel like, oh, I'm not sure I should say this. And they did, and I appreciate that so much. I'm grateful that they trusted me with their heart. So thank you to them. I also wanted to say thank you to Mr. Aiken and Ms. Anderson for their work on the governing board. They have been here as long as I've been a board member and have taught me a lot about leadership, governance, and due diligence, teamwork, disagreeing, getting along, all of those things. And I really appreciate genuinely your friendships. I know that for me, in those moments when we made really tough decisions, because we spent time together and I knew who you were and I knew your values, I knew that when we disagreed, it was because you cared about our kids. And I really appreciated that. Appreciated knowing that about you. You were there for our students. So thank you for that. And I will surely miss seeing you very often, but can still see you, and I am grateful for that. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any other?
You.
I do, but you go ahead.
All right. I'd like to start mine tonight by thanking John and Claudia for your combined 20 years of service, as well to the governing board. The mark that you guys have made on the district will be felt, for years to come, as John said, and long after we're gone, kids are still going to be looking at the names on the walls there, and you guys have made an impression on that. And some of the things, still being the newest school board member, you go out and you see the history that you guys have actually put into the district, and that will be appreciated for decades to come. Even our study sessions, where a lot of the sausage making goes on, will not be the same. So everybody thinks that the board meeting is where all the arguments and fights are supposed to happen, and that's actually not the case. It's the study sessions. That's where the fur flies, so to speak, but that's actually where the hard work of getting along does take place. So John, Claudia, you will be missed on that aspect. So I do want to thank you. And the gifts that from the study session were really heartfelt, because again, rubber chickens are a really big part of life. So they do make people smile. Next, I did attend a reality check lunch as well with Superintendent Caruth at Micah Mountains VIP. It was great seeing the students. One of the people that was there was a student who came back to work in the district. Another one was first-year teacher, and then there was a couple who were in their sunset careers. So they'd already had their career, and they came back to work in another one. So it was nice to see that they chose our school district to come back. And one was there, I want to say 35 years. So you don't spend 35 years in a place that you don't like. So, and that was actually something really nice to see. Additionally, I had the opportunity to volunteer at the Esmond Station Polar Express. And it was great seeing the community come together, kind of for a Christmas holidays kind of special that they haven't been able to do for the last couple of years. So I want to thank the folks at Esmond Station for putting that on. That was actually really nice to see. And tomorrow we have another reality check lunch over at Empire, as well as next week we'll be attending the annual ASBA conference in Scottsdale with our newly elected board members and learning from board members around the state, as well as sharing the good things that we do here in Vail.
I need to amend mine. I forgot. Is that okay? Yeah. Breaking protocol. Mr. King was Santa Claus at Esmond Station's Polar Express. And he literally sat next to all the little kids who wanted to say hi to Santa, tell them what they wanted for Christmas, including mine. And I also got to sit next to Santa. So, the Polar Express was amazing and grateful for the staff, and particularly the PTA who just really went above and beyond to make fantastic event.
Yes, Ms. Pratt.
Well, first, I have to acknowledge with Mr. King, this is your last board meeting that you can say you are the, the newest board member? Yes, so there you go. You get it this time, but after this. I want to acknowledge and recognize the middle school Q2 sports coaches and athletic directors. We're coming up to a close on the middle school sports for Q2. And I just want to thank them for giving kids an opportunity to learn a new sport, to be able to learn the teamwork and just all the lessons that come along with sporting events. I know it's a ton of time and probably a lot of heart and soul that goes into these events. So I just want to say thank you. I also want to, I know it's been said, so I'll keep it short, but recognize and acknowledge the staff at Esmond Station who really transformed the school into a winter wonderland and gave the kids a really fun event there. I also had a reality check lunch at Vail Academy with Mr. Kruth. I'd like to just recognize their school. It's just such a wonderful feeling to go to each of the schools and to feel like you always leave feeling like, oh my gosh, this is the best school in the district. And then the next reality check lunch, you think, oh my gosh, this is the best school in the district. So I love hearing that. I mean, one of the themes I felt like when my takeaway was several of the staff were like, this is my school. This is where I belong. But each one of them were saying that. And I just love how each one of our schools has such a positive and healthy culture, but also different. And it's a great place for everybody to find their own home. I also want to thank Mr. Kruth for taking the time to be intentional about blocking out this time in a schedule. I know it's a lot. Each one of us had at least one reality check lunch to acknowledge today. So thank you for doing that. And I know, I don't know that I can add to what's already been said to Mr. Aiken and Ms. Anderson, but I just want to say thank you so much. Our board meetings aren't going to be the same without you. I think in my head, I haven't quite wrapped my head around. I feel like we're just growing to a 7-member board and not going to lose you. So I just want to say thank you for everything you've taught me, every investment that you've made into our community. We appreciate you. Now we're going to have to figure out somebody else to ask really hard questions when Mr. Breen comes to present to the board. So we're going to miss you, John. So
I can come when he's presenting.
that's fine. Yeah. I'm actually hoping to see you guys. Mr. Tate comes to speak to the board. So I'm hoping to see you guys on the call to the public Sunday. But thank you so much. I love you both.
Thank you. Mr. Aiken, you have any last board reports?
No. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, I do. I have my last board report. I wrote it out because I didn't want to get emotional. It's been an honor to serve on the board the last 12 years. I'm grateful for all the members I served with. Their only agenda has been to provide the best education possible to our students in a caring community. And that really is true. And I think that's what really has helped make our district so great all these years. The staff and administration have been unwavering in their dedication to our students. This has always been an inspiration to me. What the staff and administration do on a daily basis is probably one of the most difficult jobs there is. Teach children to think critically and help them become good citizens, eager to contribute to society. After sitting on the board for so many years, I know it is not possible to please all the people all the time. All we can do is make decisions with the best information available and listen to one another with civility, integrity, and respect when determining the best way forward. I have every confidence the new board will keep Vail and its path of excellence going for years. And I thank you all for allowing me to serve this wonderful community. So with that, we will go to the consent agenda. All items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There will be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Do any board members wish to pull an item? Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, and members of the board. It's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
I'll accept a motion in a second.
So moved.
Mr. King moves.
Second.
Mr. Aiken seconds. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Old business. Oh, this is the CSG Workforce Grant distributions. Mr. Cruz.
President Anderson and members of the board, this is an action item that was previously studied at our last meeting. Mrs. Kubiak is here to, and Mr. Harms is here. If there's any questions regarding that, I'll just give it a quick overview. Our community program serves a preschool population, and through the COVID relief funds, federal COVID relief funds, the Child Care Stabilization Grant, CCSG program has distributed funds across the nation to help support this population as well. Our community programs received one grant already in July of this year. We received notification that the community programs for our child care workers for preschool who serve students in preschool would receive an additional $1.458 million that needs to be expended on staff and must be encumbered and spent by the end of September of 2023. So Ms. Kubiak and her staff have looked at how to do that. It's a wonderful opportunity to also kind of further the development of staff and also, frankly, provide increases to an area of our organization through community services that are often hard to fill, and we receive a lot of turnover. So they have thoughtfully looked at how to expend those funds in a way that can leverage that. They're laid out in quarterly retention bonuses and other, as well as cost of living increases, paid childcare programs. There's also pieces for program support coordinators, professional development bonuses, recruitment supplies, college classes, substitute hourly differentials, and paying of fingerprint cards. So those things are laid out in specific amounts. Again, happy to review any of those in more detail if you would like. I'll go ahead and make the recommendation. The Vail School District Governing Board approved the CCSG workforce grant distributions as presented.
I'll accept the motion.
I'll move.
Ms. Tippett moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Pratt, I'm sorry. How long have I been in? Ms. Pratt seconds. Are there any questions or comments? I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is updated certified technology support specialist job description. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson and members of the board. This is an action item as well that was studied at a previous board meeting. I was thinking about that as it's rolled around. This has to do with the technology support specialist job description. Mr. Breen is here and is certainly able to answer any in-depth questions as well. But as I was thinking about this, I was living in Winter Haven. My wife and I and our two very young daughters were living in Winter Haven at the time. And right around the corner from Winter Haven was Simutech, which at Fort Lowell and Tucson Boulevard. And so Mr. Federoff would occasionally load up the big iMac or Mac boxes in his car and take them. And then he remembered that I lived in Winter Haven. And so pretty regularly, Mr. Fedorov would come over and deposit a large number of our computers into my car so I could drop them off on my way home to Simitech. And I dropped them off to a wonderful young man named Steve Lee, who I got to know there. And Steve is just a great guy. He worked at Simitech. He was their tech repair guy. And then Mr. Fedorov had the brainstorm, and we supported that of, hey, maybe we just need to hire Mr. Lee to come. And he was our first technology support specialist person, probably back in 2003, 2004, somewhere in that time frame. Well, I am still using computers, but they look vastly different than what they did back then. And the technology I interact with, we all interact with, looks vastly different. And the way that it is repaired and or not repaired anymore also is very different. And so fundamentally, this is just a cleanup of that job description for the positions that are now in that. And there's more than just Mr. Lee. Actually, Mr. Lee is the supervisor now to address the current conditions of need in the technology support. So that's what that's about. Mr. Breen, I'm sure, can tell you the more technical details of that, but that's a good illustration of what that is. So fundamentally, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve the updated certified technology support specialist job description as presented.
I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Mr. King moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Pratt seconds. Are there any questions or comments? I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is transportation zones. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, President Anderson and members of the board. Mr. Carney.
Thank you, President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, and members of the board. Previously, we had brought this item before the board in last week as a study item. If you recall, prior to the opening of the Micah Mountain High School, we worked to try to preserve high school choice. We had the conundrum of how can we continue to provide transportation to all our schools, not only because of a potential lack of resources with regard to drivers, but also in terms of efficiency and in terms of cost. And so the board had us take a look at transportation zones prior to the opening of Micah Mountain, and transportation zones were put in place, and they've largely proved to be effective. Prior to transportation zones, if you recall, we had 93% of students get their first high school choice, 100% of students get their first or second high school choice. Since the implementation of transportation zones, we've still seen that 87% of kids have gotten their first choice, and 100% of kids have gotten their first or second choice. We've also realized the cost savings. If we had not gone to transportation zones, we'd have had to have 5 additional buses and routes to Micah Mountain High School, which on an annual basis would cost us approximately $275,000. Although they've largely been successful, one of our guiding principles is we are continually seeking to improve. And so we formed a committee comprised of 25 community members and staff members to study what were the things that were working well and what were things that possibly needed improvement, not only for the upcoming year, but into the future as well. And the work of that committee is that we are bringing forth a recommendation to move the new Rocking K area, which is currently, those kids are in the Micah Mountain Transportation Zone, to the Cienega High School zone for several reasons. One, as we look at future growth of the district, we believe there will be a lot of growth that occurs along the Houghton corridor. And those folks will still have 2 comprehensive high schools in both Micah Mountain and Empire High School. 2, there are flood zones out there available or near the new Rocking K area. And so our concern is that if those students were going to continue to go to Micah Mountain High School, that not only would our drivers have to cross through those flood zones, but so would student drivers as well. And by switching that particular zone to Cienega, we can work to avoid that. Also, currently, we only have 15 high school students in the new Rocking K area. Only several of those are bus riders. And so we know by potentially moving that area now before home growth explodes there, that will be a move that will be potentially easier on families who are already going to a different school. So with that in mind, I want to share the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve that students from the new Rocking K area, be moved from the Micah Mountain transportation zone to the Cienega High School transportation zone, beginning the 2024 school year. And that transportation for these high school students be grandfathered for 1 year. Are there any questions?
I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Mr. King? Oh, second. Ms. Pratt seconds. Are there any questions or comments?
Just one.
Ms. Tibbet?
We studied this pretty in depth the first time around, and I'm just wondering if there was any communication from the community after a discussion that you guys have, because as a board member, I haven't received any.
Beyond the committee being there, we have not done a broader communication than I'm aware of. Mr. Carney.
Thank you, President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, Mrs. Tippett. The only thing, we have not done a broader communication. After that last board meeting, we did hear back from one parent, our base liaison, Betsy Fleming. She and I had an extensive conversation. She had wished to be on that committee. As I shared with her what committee findings were, she was satisfied with the response and understood why we needed to make the move that we needed to make. I did share with her that another part of the committee's recommendations that we continue to examine the I-10 and Wilmot area for possible changes in the future, and assured her that if we did that, we brought the committee back together, we would have her be a part of that committee's work.
Mr. Carney, can you refresh our memory? How many students are in high school currently that are going to Micah Mountain, attend in the Rocking K area that's impacted, that are currently going to
Yeah,
Micah
there's
Mountain?
15 kids that live in the New Rocking K area, and approximately half of those are bus riders currently.
So fundamentally, the number of students that would be impacted is a handful. So that's, yeah. We didn't feel the need to do a broader communication that impacted the handful of kids.
Was I say both of it?
Mr. King?
Mr. Carney, with this isn't going to actually start until next school year, correct? So the grandfathering wouldn't start till the 23-24 school year?
President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, Mr. King, that is correct. Yes, we would not put this in place until the 23-24 school year, and then the grandfathering would occur for 1 additional year.
Ms. Pratt?
I just want to say thank you for the time and effort that was put into studying this. Mr. King and I served on the committee for this, and I just think it's so, it impacts kids in a way that I just appreciate the time that you and the committee, I know Mr. Hurley worked on it as well, took so that to minimize the impact for students. I also appreciate that you're forward thinking and instead of being reactive, that we're proactive about this, to say instead of impacting 100 kids, now we're doing this before, and when it only impacts maybe 8 or so kids. So I appreciate you guys looking at this before it's actually a huge problem, when it's minimizing the impact for students and families. So thank you.
Ms. Pratt?
Yes. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Oh, we have to vote. So a little detail there. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Thank you. Next section of the agenda is new business, and the first item is the 2022-2023 301 goals. Mr. Cruz.
Mrs. Penn.
Good evening, President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, and members of the board. We're bringing forward this evening the proposed 301 goals for our teachers. These goals have been developed at sites following the adoption of our district goals and the data dig that we recently held. The goals there are 2 goals for each teacher. They pay out at $700 per goal for a total of $1,400. They are aligned to our district goals, and as you read through those, you will see that they pretty much mirror the 2 district goals. in that they have a site-specific target for benchmark informative students demonstrating their proficiency on benchmarks and formatives after reteach and retest opportunities. And they also have a menu of options for teachers to demonstrate their support of beyond textbooks by choosing from that menu that was provided and is part of the district goals as well. So the theme throughout these is student academic achievement and support of beyond textbooks. It's a study item tonight, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Pratt?
Just a quick comment. I love making goals, and so I love reading the school goals. And I just think sometimes we look at goals as kind of a rubber stamp, or just let's resurrect the ones from last year and just put this year's date on them, kind of thing. But as I was looking through them, I just love that each school has something just a teeny bit different. I wanted to read just a little bit of Empire's. So they had their academic goal to decrease the amount of kids who are failing in one class. And so they have the goal, and then they have, in order to decrease this, teachers will, and then they have a few bullet points. And one of them was to host and send personal invitations for weekly tutoring times, and send personal invitations for freshmen to attend freshman tutoring hour. And I think about just my work in other areas. I know for myself, when we try to move the mark in whatever it is that we're trying to work on, personal invitations are a huge thing. So to me, that spoke that they have a genuine interest in moving the needle on this, and that they're going to make the effort to send a personal invitation. That really speaks volumes. To have an invitation from your teacher to the student, I feel very confident that they're going to be able to meet and probably exceed this goal. So thank you for your time on this.
Ms. Tippett?
My comment is similar. You know, of course, as we review the goals, we're looking to ensure that it meets the mark and matches our district goal, goals that we have set. And I really appreciated that each site is really looking at their site individually and at their own student data to set their goals, because they've used data to see places where they need improvement. And then that allows them to target those areas to help students succeed. And so I really appreciate the individual effort made by each school to help their students the way that their students need.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. So the next item is the 2022-2023 site leadership goals. Mr. Crude?
Mrs. Anderson, Ms. Penn?
President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. This evening, we're also bringing forward the 2022-23 site leadership goals. Each year, the site leadership has the opportunity to select between 2 and 4 goals. Each of the sites choose the number that best suits their needs and purpose. And most of the sites have selected goals that match exactly with the 301 goals. This puts forth that the site leadership is as invested equally in the success of those goals. In addition, several sites have added another third goal. This third goal typically focuses on culture, often through either providing culture building events on site or doing classroom walkthroughs where they have the opportunity to provide feedback and set the expectation of where teachers move with their instruction. At the high school level, you'll see that the goals focus on student growth or reducing the failure rate is another area, and Ms. Pratt spoke to this briefly as well. These goals are set after the data dig and after we've looked through the needs at each site. We also spend some time at a principal meeting, making sure that principals have an opportunity to kind of talk through ideas with each other and have the opportunity to learn from each other. And this is always just a wonderful conversation to be part of. This is also a study item, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Are there any comments or questions?
I have one. I just loved some of those connecting goals that some of our leadership, one school has the goal to walk through 50 classrooms in a week. And
Each week.
each week, and each administrator as well. So, I mean, that's quite a bit. And another school has set a goal to contact 100% of parents in the district and make a connection with them and find out how they're doing. Ask the hard question. Tell me what you think. I love that. I really appreciated this year's goals, and I feel like they're all designed to propel our schools and our students forward. Thank you.
Mr. King?
This is kind of one of the ones that I was talking to Superintendent Caruth about earlier in regards to culture and seeing how the principals are taking an active role, especially at the high school level, to really build that culture and reinforce that culture. Something that we John talked about at all staff this year, and basically keeping the culture as part, even though we are a large district now, we're keeping that small school district culture. And the one that really just stuck out to me, and I have to give Jeff Parks credit for this, was his kind of culture goal, is having the teachers actually take an active part in identifying 5 students each, and then taking an active part in making sure that they don't fail and helping them, basically reinforcing that. So that one actually just stuck out, and I wanted to actually make that little kind of accolade for Jeff. So.
Great. So the next item on the agenda is high school literature revised list, and Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. Mrs. Penn.
President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board. This evening, we are bringing forward to you for your study and ultimately for your asking for your support in getting ahead of myself because that's like next week's. So I'm going to just back up and say we're just coming for a study of some books that have been brought forward for recommendation. I want to just hit on a couple of things because we haven't actually brought any books to the board for approval in over 2 years. And although this was something that we did regularly every semester for many years, since 2008, actually, we haven't done it for a while. And that was mostly because we were just interrupted with dealing with COVID, and we had our attentions on those pieces. And when we had a book list, an extensive book list that got us through that time. Teachers are now wanting to bring forward for review some books that have not been on the list. And so that's what we have for you today. The process for this is that when a teacher wants to use a book as a class read that is connected to a grade, that book comes first to their ITL. If the ITL supports that choice, then it's taken to the principal. If the principal supports the choice, then it's taken to the literature review committee. That committee is made up of teachers from each site, administrators from most sites, the curriculum department, and we have a conversation about each of the books. We assign at least 2 readers to each book. And then we come back and talk about it. We talk about what might be potential hotspots, and we talk about how it will be used in the classroom. What we have added to the process at this point is that we also have a parent permission slip, which I'm going to give you an example of in just a minute. But if a book makes it through the literature review committee, and not every book does, then it goes back to the sites, and principals are asked to take it to their site council and have the site council have an opportunity to see the list and comment on the books. After that happens, then the books are brought to the board for your study and for your review. We have been working on both the parent permission slip, as I mentioned, and we have also been working on definition of serious literary value. Any book that has any reference to sexual activity, and it is a very closely defined and definition provided by the legislature, then that book requires parent opt-in consent. High school teachers felt very strongly that they wanted to have parent opt-in consent on all books. So that is what we are asking for. Additionally, if a book has any hotspots, then it must meet a definition of serious literary value. That is not defined by the legislature, so our committee worked to create a definition of literary value, and I brought that definition for you as well. So we are in this stage right now of bringing the book to you for study. It will not be used until a board has approved it. We do have teachers who are looking forward to perhaps using some of these selections in third quarter if they are approved. So I'm going to pass around the definition of serious literary value and a copy of the parent consent form. The consent form, as you will see, has a area to be filled in by the teacher. It gives a summary of the book. It provides the standards that will be addressed, and it provides the significance, and what is communicated there is why the teacher chose this book specifically to address the values, to address the standards and the for the choking on myself here, I apologize. Why the teacher selected this book to address the standards. We have also been doing the work of trying to streamline the hotspots. Our previous book list had lots of different ways to describe hotspots in books. This one we have narrowed down to profane or vulgar language and have identified that if that is in the book, then it is highlighted. The sexual content that I mentioned already, scenes of violence or drug and alcohol use. And although taken kind of in a list like that, it sounds pretty, it's open for interpretation. I'd like to just remind that some of the books we're most familiar with, for example, Romeo and Juliet, will meet the criteria for sexual content, will also meet the criteria for drug use and violence. So although those are highlighted, the description in the book summary should be able to help parents determine at what level those particular ideas may be represented. Let me bring this around.
I got this.
If there are any questions, I'd be happy to address those as well on this study item.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Kim.
I I am assuming, but I don't really assume so this task is some of the changes based on the bubble we dealt with absolutely true diary of the American Indian. That's my opening question, and then I have like four more.
Mrs. Penn.
President Anderson, Mr. Caruth, members of the board. To that point, Mr. Aiken, some of it is a reflection on our process based on that experience. Some of it is a revision to our process based on some legislative updates that have happened recently as well.
Mrs. Penn, just also to full, because I think you can tease apart those two things, and I think that may be where you're going here. The sexually explicit content and the definition of what that is and the definition of literary value are all legislative driven. Some of the pieces of process around asking for signature and the as Mrs. Penn has described, more actively requiring parents' involvement in understanding what the literature is. That falls more on the side of the experience that we that we heard and from our community. So I think those are more the how to kind of pull those two things apart. We took the experience that we did, engage parents more actively, but a lot of the change was also legislative. Is that a fair summary?
President Anderson, Mr. Caruth, that is fair summary. We wanted to be in a position where we're being very transparent about the literature that we're using and giving parents information up front so that they can make a decision that works for their family.
Mr. Aiken?
Thank you. So maybe you said it and I was trying to listen and I didn't hear. And so I guess I just want to ask directly, the process isn't determining what books we will and will not allow, because there are some legislative driven things, as you're saying, Mr. Cruz, but then there's also some parent choice driven things as well. And what I don't, honestly, it doesn't matter to me. It's Mr. Buster and Mrs. Anderson to get to deal with this one next month. But what I am struggling with is where we would be in a position of pulling a book because some parents got pissed about it. Rather, I think what you're saying is, if this book has literary value, using the example you gave of Shakespeare, which I think by any objective standard probably does, and it meets the criteria for drug and sexual content or whatever, we're still going to do the book. The parent can just opt out. I guess is just a succinct way of saying, is that the modification that we're making?
Mrs. Penn.
President Anderson, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, we are still bringing the books to the board for approval. If the board chooses to approve those books, then we are still using them, and the parent has the opportunity to opt out and has a different assignment that is available for their child.
And also, just to add to that, Mr. Aiken, because I think what you're also asking, these are new books that would be added to that list, which goes through the process that once they're on there, this is the process. This is the process by which they were evaluated. Mrs. Penn is also describing the process by which parents, the transparency aspect that we've added, the parent and engagement that we've added as a result of that process. For books that were previously approved, Mrs. Penn is working with a separate committee and a separate group to go through that list of books over the past 12 plus years to reevaluate them through the lens of the new legislation and the new definitions. And so there may be some changes in what was previously approved because of the new legislation and the new process. So I'm just clarifying, these two things run together in this particular agenda item. I want to be careful not to wander too far off here, but we've spoken about that here, and those are being done by quarter basis this year so that teachers can feel comfortable about what books they are choosing from to bring forward to their classes and their parents. So the entirety of the previously approved book list, we haven't had the time to go through and vet with the new legislation and the new process. So they're looking at it kind of by quarter process to look at those books because of the legislative change. We have to go through that process, frankly, to protect both our teachers and do the due diligence and be transparent with our parents because of that legislation. So what is represented tonight are new books that meet that threshold, that meet that process, that will be added to the list. Simultaneous to that process, Mrs. Penn is working with another committee of folks who are reviewing our previously approved list to vet it through the new criteria.
Yeah, but I'm putting words around it, so give me a sec.
Okay, good. Ms. Tippett, I can, so I just received my first parental notification, about for my middle schooler, actually. I really appreciated this, and information about, what those hotspots were is for the book Night, which will continue to teach my son about the Holocaust, and I appreciate the opportunity he has to learn about that. But my question is, do we have definitions around profane or vulgar language, sexual content? So I guess there can be a book with a few words and there can be a book with 200 words. I guess that I don't need that now, but I would love to know what flags something. And then the other question I have is, the books that are being submitted, if you could tell us what grades those are being submitted for.
I don't understand your first question, but I want to.
Well, I'm just wondering what the definitions are.
So are you asking them to tease apart the difference? Sorry.
Sure.
Are you asking them to tease apart the difference between PG-13 and R? Kind of.
I'm not asking them to do anything. I'm just asking them, what are they doing? Yes, do you mind if I did my comment? I think it's a great question.
Yeah.
I think that one time one of my kids was going, it was actually a podcast, but I told the teacher that I wasn't comfortable with the language in there, and she said, okay, I'll edit it out. And then she sent it back to me, and there was still 98% of the swear words in there. She'd just taken out like 2 F words, but everything else was in there. And that was her definition of the clean version at that point. So I think you know what I mean? Like, my definition of profane isn't the same as yours. So I think it's a great question. I'm just wondering what it is.
President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, if I'm understanding the question, it is what triggers it to be identified as profane and vulgar language. And what we are using currently is that if it has 4 profane words or 20 profane words, it is treated the same. If a book contains a large number of profane words, then it's really examined for its literary merit. We had a book that came through the committee just this past time that had a high number of profane words, and its literary merit was questioned, and so the book did not come forward to you. There are other books with a higher number, and I believe one example is probably Enrique's Journey that's on the list. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning book that has clear literary merit. There's no worry or no question. and that was brought forward, but it is not tagged one way or another depending on the number of profane words in there.
Yes.
So I agree with Ms. Pratt because I am 100% certain that she and I have different standards, which is to say she has one and I don't. I mean, serious, I mean, sort of. But like, and since we're having an academic conversation, pardon my profanity, but like, you know, I can see an artistic piece of work or something like where they're saying, God, that guy's just an asshole. And that's not offensive in any way because you're just describing someone that's being a jerk. Whereas if you're using that word in a really derogatory context, so it's not necessarily about quantity, is it about context? I guess I could have just asked that much more succinctly. Is it about quantity and not context and not quantity? Because then it gets really objective or subjective. Sorry.
President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, I'd like to be able to tell you that we have a nice little rubric that says it all just kind of fits like this, but we don't.
Okay.
And we do look at context. We look at, as I mentioned, the literary merit. We look at, there was another book that did not come forward because of the use of profanity that, and the vulgar language as well, which in the context seemed to be just added on for shock value or student interest or,
Right.
That kind of thing. And so that book wasn't brought forward. But we don't necessarily have a rubric. We're just sitting around a group of, 20 educators who are trying to make their best judgment call on which book is going to bring some value and some learning opportunities for our students.
I think it's fair to also add, Mr. Aiken and board, this is a work in progress as far as what we're doing with this and how we will continue to refine this process. We're making significant steps in the direction to do that. And in speaking to several other superintendents in the area in particular, they're asking me, what are you doing? And can you share what you're doing? Because they don't have a committee like this together that's working on this to come up with it. So I imagine that as we roll this process out, we will begin to understand and be able to tease out further issues like this that need to be done as it rolls out to parents and we get feedback. So we will continue to listen and modify as we go. But
I sense an NSBA breakout session. Ms. Penn,
Oh.
right? How do good districts determine literary value? Debbie will tell you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm
Are
done.
you done?
Maybe,
Well-
but please go.
No, I will give Ms. Pratt
It's his favorite.
yeah.
Yes, I made that clear
It
earlier.
is my favorite as well.
Okay. I can see you have things to say though.
Honestly, I couldn't think of a better gift that we could give to have this on the agenda.
The
for
only
your-
thing that would make it better is if this was the last topic
That's
on the
true.
agenda, which
And
it's
then
not.
we would see Mr. Aiken unleashed, honestly. Anyway, I just want to comment. I think that, I mean, as you had pointed out, I think that there's many different parents with many different standards, which, I'm not to judge what is right or wrong. I think that's the opportunity that we, each of us have to be able to have our own standards and be able to teach our kids what we feel is appropriate. I think it's an imperfect process, as you have stated, that we don't always get it right, but I think that it's worth the time and the energy and the effort that's going into this. I think acknowledging that we will never find the box that fits everyone perfectly, And so acknowledging for me, I know that I am a little more particular than some parents. And so I appreciate the opportunity to look at these, to be able to say, okay, maybe I don't feel comfortable with it. Maybe we might want to opt out. Or for some, my kids also read Night. I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for us to talk about some really deep and heavy topics as a family. But I appreciate knowing that they were talking about it and some of the things that were important in there. So just acknowledging that it's not a box that's going to fit all parents, and that it's okay, you know, in a public school setting like this, you may feel as a parent that this doesn't fit within your moral compass or the standards you're teaching your kids, and it's okay to say this isn't okay for us, so we're going to opt out on this. And so I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I appreciate teachers who are willing to be flexible and giving that opportunity for kids. So thank you very much for doing this.
Mr. King.
Would it be possible to get a I know we're gonna get copies of these books, but before we bring this back for action, can we be given sufficient time to read all these? That way we can have informed consent on what we're actually doing as well as board members?
Mr. King, I'll jump in there. Mr. King requested, happy to provide other board members with any copies of the books if you would like to read that over for some Christmas reading. Mrs. Penn and I have discussed kind of the timeline for this. There isn't a burning urgency on all of them. There is some urgency on some of them, on some of the books, because some teachers want to be able to use them third quarter. So if that is the case, and where we understand it, there may be a usage in third quarter, we can prioritize that so you understand that. And if requested, you can break apart the list and do it in multiple pieces. But considering our next board meeting isn't until second week of January, you've got some nice fireside reading to do. You can do over the break.
I have one other quick question. Did John take all the questions, or do I still? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. I'm just teasing you. I might have missed it. I apologize if I did. Did you tell us how many books that were reviewed? I know that 7 are before us for review, but do you know how many came to the literary review, or you don't have that information?
President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, I do have that information over on my laptop.
Okay.
I will send it to you from over there.
Okay, perfect. Thank
So
you.
that
I was just curious. I was mostly wondering, did we whittle 70 down to 7, or was it we whittled, 15 down to 7, something like that?
It would, President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, it would be more like we whittled 9 down to 7. It would be more in that onesies or twosies, maybe 3 off. I don't remember exactly, but it was not 15 down to 7.
Okay.
And while I have a moment, the other thing I wanted to say is that regarding the hotspots, what we're really trying to do with that is just alert parents to a place to look. So if that's something that they really want more information on, they know where to go and look. I mean, they know what to look for, rather than trying to say this meets this definition or this standard. We're just simply trying to say there's profane language. If this is something that is important to you, know that it's here, and then parents, you can determine whether it meets your own family limit or not.
Thank you. Okay, is everyone done?
No, I think Kelly's got one.
Oh, okay.
It would be helpful for me, going forward, if the books also listed what age group they're targeting.
Oh, President Anderson, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, I will get that updated for you. These books, typically when books come forward on the high school book list, they the approval would cover any high school grade. With some exceptions, there are books that would come forward only for use in AP or only for use in 912. I can run through that kind of quickly here. Beat the Odds is being requested for 11th grade, although, as I mentioned, it would be kind of approved for all grade levels. My Own Words is requested for 11th grade. Catch Me If You Can is requested for 11th grade. Enrique's Journey is requested for 11th and 12th grade. Lady Otterly's Secret is for 11th and 12th AP Literature, and A Christmas Carol is for 11th grade. All But My Life is for 9th through 12th.
Thank you. Okay, well, I always love to read what books are being offered because I have yet to find a book that I did not see some value in. And I appreciate so much the process by which the books are evaluated and the different levels that it goes through. And again, I love reading about the books that are being offered. And on Enrique's story journey just sounds like such an excellent book for students to read, to understand and be out of their culture, to see what other cultures really do go through and the journeys that they do go through, as well as my laptop is running out of juice, but the first book, the woman from the Holocaust, it's just so important for kids to read that stuff. And then I just want to share that the work that's been done to go through the other books that have already been approved and go through the definition of a serious literary value, which I'm sure was with a bunch of educators was quite a journey. And then I know that we have always had the opportunity for parents to opt out of books, always. And now that it's in more of a regulated form and that type of thing, I think that's, well, it's fine. So just thank you so much for going through all this work. And please thank everyone else involved. So I guess that's a study item. So we'll go on unless we have other. The next item on the agenda is Old Vail Post Office Preservation and Conservation and Easement Deed.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. The next two items, and this being the first of them, revolves around the old Vail Post Office, which is located on the district property and land between the tracks. The school district purchased that property and adjacent 15 acres in 2017. Prior to that, that land was privately owned. And we have been working even before that with the Vail Preservation Society on a method to begin to restore the old 1909 Old Vail Post Office. It's the longest standing and lone standing building for the original town site of Vail. Vail Preservation Society actually worked with the Historical Society to get a historical designation on that in 2011, even though it was on private property, but struggled to be able to secure grants to be able to restore that. It's going to take a significant sum to be able to do that. When the district purchased the property, the subsequent action of the board, actually, I think it was in simultaneous action with the board in another agenda item, was to provide a lease for a portion of the property that included the Old Vail Post Office and a small surrounding area to the Vail Preservation Society for $10 a year. Thinking with the notion that Vail Preservation Society could then go out and work to secure grants. They have been doing that actively seeking that and have not been able to be successful in getting large grants to be able to cover those costs until this summer. The Arizona State Parks Board and the State Preservation Society awarded VPS $249,000 towards the restoration of the building, which would be the largest sum to date and really work to help stabilize that building until additional funds can be raised. And in addition to those direct funds, they can use that grant as a catalyst to also raise money to help restore the entirety of the building. In looking through that grant, the language of that really, as it was presented to us, would have encumbered the school district as the grant awardee and not Vail Preservation Society. So we needed to split those two things apart. And so that the district wasn't the fiduciary of the grant, nor was the district responsible for filling the conditions of the grant. That Vail Preservation Society was doing that. So Mr. Carney worked with the Vail Preservation Society and our attorneys to do just that. And the solution, which I think is a very good one, is to, instead of doing a lease, a dollar lease, to create a conservation easement and deed for that property for a similar amount of time. And so what you have before you is that conservation easement deed language that creates the conservation deed for the same amount of property in area that we are currently leasing to the Vail Preservation Society, that effectively allows the clean break, so to speak, from the responsibility of the district to fulfill those things. We still retain the ownership, but are allowing that piece of property to be held in a conservation deed by the Preservation Society. So that's the summation of that. I sent the language. The language is also attached in the background, but happy to answer any questions around that. This is a study item.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I think this was one of the first action items, like kind of big action items we had as a board member, was purchase the land and discussions around ensuring that the post office have an opportunity to help preserve Vail's history, because there's merit in preserving history and Vail's culture, and as we nurture our students now, and they can look back on the past and see where their community came from. So I have always had the intention that this would happen someday, that this money would grant and come, and the opportunity to restore the post office would happen. And so I'm grateful that it's here, and I support this action as an opportunity to make sure that Vail Preservation Society is able to see it through.
Any other comments or questions? I must agree with you, your comments, and I'm just so happy to see that some grant money is coming in, and because the Vail Preservation Society is just an excellent community asset. It's my 2 cents. And so then we'll go on to the lease revision for the old Vail Post Office. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This is the subsequent item to the one just discussed. Basically, because there's a conservation easement being considered, the language in the current lease needs to be amended to address the conservation easement and the issue of rent related to that. So fundamentally, this is just cleaning up those two pieces with the associated language. I just needed to pull those two things apart because the board will need to take action on the conservation easement and then the lease revision. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, Seeing none, we will go on to the next item, which is IFB 23-011-27 Roof Replacement Project, Calvin Baker Leadership Center. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. Sometimes I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, or in this context, maybe $2.9 million.
Oh my God.
So the school district had the opportunity, the very fortunate opportunity to purchase our current district office in about 23 years ago, in 1999, from Mountain States. We purchased this property, which is roughly about 50,000, maybe 54,000 square feet of space under roof, which is commensurate with about the same size as an elementary school, and the adjacent 30 acres for $1.1 million. It was a really good deal, but this building was also in really, really bad shape. For those few of us who remember what it was like, there were literally bobcats living inside the building. We had to mow the parking lot to get in here, and we had to do significant environmental work to make sure that the building was sound. The original owner was leasing from the Teamsters who owned the building and were occupying actually the worst part of the building, which is east of us here, and continued once we purchased that to lease the space from us. But the building has been built, this building has been here since the 50s and been built over about a 20-year period of time into the 70s when the copper market crashed and their original business kind of receded. And so it has been a hodgepodge of development over that period of time, and add-ons and additions. The roof, as bad as it was inside, I think the roof was probably worse by many accounts. And Mr. Baker, previous superintendent, Mr. Flores, previous director of facilities, and Mark Bollard from Swayman Associates. After the purchase, we needed to fix the roof. We needed to do something with the roof because it was leaking really bad. And the solution was to simply close their eyes, in essence, and blow 3 inches of foam roofing over everything that existed up there. As you can see here, there are pipes, there are parapets, there are things that drop off. There's actually, I didn't get the picture of the cactus that's growing on the roof. There are access points that nobody knows where they're going through. All of these pipes and things, we don't know fully what they go to. Some are operable, some aren't. Some contain wires, plumbing, others do not. All three of the previously mentioned people chuckled because I remember this conversation and agreed 23 years ago that they would be retired when the next person needed to address this roof. All three, two of them are retired. Unfortunately, Mr. Bollard from Swayman Associates is not. And when we contacted him and reminded him that of those previous conversations, he said, yes, I was fully thinking that I would be retired, not having to dress with this. I may just retire. All that to say, the roof is a very complex, the roof on this facility is a very complex project. All those random things that you see there need to be identified. The entire roof needs to be peeled off. And it's not just the roof, but it's the underdecking and things that are under that we need. So a regular roofing company was not sufficient. It's truly a general contractor job. So therefore, we were bracing for a price to come back, and we got it. But a number of there were a number of people solicited or responded to our solicitation. That was heard by our standard committee, including other contractors on the project who went through our standard process. And the intent would be to use capital funds to re-roof this building. The anticipated cost, well, it's a hard bid, so the maximum cost would be $2.9 million to be able to do that. Mr. Wood thinks that actually there's probably some savings to be realized because of just understanding what the conduit is up there, that we can do and, do some value engineering, but that would be the maximum cost. So, with that, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation. The Vail School District Governing Board award IFB 23-011-27 for the Calvin Baker Leadership Center roof replacement project to the vendor Building Excellence LLC as presented.
Okay, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Mr. King moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Pratt seconds. And are there any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Yes.
Yeah.
So how long is this, project projected to take?
A long
That's
time,
my
Mr.
question.
King. It's going to have to be done in sections, just because of the complex, well, two reasons. One, we're using the facility, we can't vacate the facility. So we'll need to do it in sections. So we can anticipate that it could take up to a year to execute.
Okay. And in your picture, was that a catwalk that I saw going across, or was that just
It
random?
might have been a cat
random
walking
conduit?
across. I mean, but there's no, if you want to, if I would happily take anybody up there, there's stairs up there to go see. It is, yeah, you've never, Mr. Ballard has done projects around Tucson for almost 40 years of his architectural career, and he has literally never seen a roof like this. And contractors who go up there, we've had contractors go up there and say, nope, we're not even touching that as a bid. So it's very complex.
So with that being said though, too, with this going through, will this will be a good permanent cleanup? We'll know everything that's up there, even though it's going to be done in sections. It'll be, when the next roof comes in 20, 30 years, and the next board's sitting up here, and the next superintendent's sitting up here, they're not going to have to worry about what's going on, and, it'll be a cleaner process and maybe even a cost savings at that point.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. King, members of the board. I was going to say something funny, but I won't. But yes, the short version of that is when I'm retired and the next board is considering this, it should be a much easier process. And all of those things, because this is an old building, we're still going to need to run utilities on the roof, but the intent is to streamline that in process. We don't know what's under that to cover the roof the way they did 23 years ago. And it was a cost savings. We didn't have the money 23 years ago to be able to go and redo that after purchase the building and then redo the roof the way it needed to be done at that period of time. They simply just blew foam over everything and then crossed their fingers that it would work. And part of the problem is once the foam starts leaking, we don't know where the leak is in the foam and where it's running into the building. You cannot identify that. So all that, the entirety of the roof is coming off, and they're redecking the entire thing and rerouting the utilities that we need into a more cohesive and understandable way, and then fixing entire underlayment of it. One issue that we have, and this is not really funny, but one issue we continue to have is rodents and other things. The bobcats are gone, so the rodents are still here, but we don't know where those access points are on the roof to be able to do that. And so our ability to be able to clean that up will also help the rest of the building.
And then the last question, what is the warranty going to be on the roof?
I don't know the specific length of the roof of that. Mrs. Kudos, do you know? Yeah. 25 years. We'll double check and get that information to you.
Do you have questions, Deborah? Just, I know that this roof is done in many different sections, this goes end to end and the whole deal.
Yes. We are not doing the section kind of just, we're using the facility as far as we will use it now. We rent some space for storage and some commercial space. Our intent is not to do that section of the roof at this time.
Wow.
And part of that is, and happy to take you through there if you haven't been through there, we oftentimes refer to that as the catacombs. It is slump block building that is really not, not usable in a way that we could ever use it for office space. It's really set up for warehouse, storage space, or one business we're renting to does like metal fabrication, so it's kind of like shop space, but it's not really set up. It isn't conducive to any kind of office space. So, there isn't the need, and two, we don't have the money that would increase the amount of money to be able to do that for space that we have no intention of occupying for district staff. Thank you, Mrs. Quiroz.
Any other questions or comments? Then I will ask for us to vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item is IFB 23-014-27, modular classrooms for Micah Mountain High School, purchase and lease option. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. This is an item that related to a topic at our last study session, and related, frankly, to our transportation zones. But how are we dealing with district enrollment, the enrollment bubbles that we have, in particular at the high school level, and looking at how do we be good stewards of taxpayer dollars to increase temporarily high school space, which we will need, but not use. We don't have the need, and we may not have the need for a longer period of time. That's yet to be seen on expanding high school space to phase 2 of Micah Mountain that has been planned for some time, for certainly not 5 years, more likely in the 10-year time frame. Well, that we'll know more about that in the next several years. But we have a immediate issue and concern of needing high school space for a few years. And the solution to that is using 3 modular buildings, which would create 6 modular classrooms, one of which our intent is to purchase, and then the other 2 we would lease, so that we wouldn't, we would not own those and could return those, so that those we wouldn't be dealing with modular space on a campus that is master planned to be doubled in size at some point, and try and figure that into the configuration at a later date. So that's what's in front of us. That solicitation went to the street. That bid was reviewed by our standard committee process, and the total amount for both the purchase and the lease is just over $600,000. Just keep in mind that the lease portion would be a 36-month lease. So the portion of the lease amount would actually carry over a 3-year period of time. So it wouldn't be that $600,000, portion of that would be paid out over a 3-year period of time. The intent would be to use capital funds on that and some M&O money on that. And part of the reason for the idea for using M&O money is that will allow, right now, as an example, we have 50 out-of-district open enrollment kids that we don't have space for moving forward into 8th grade. This will allow us to have some space. We don't have to say, thank you for being with us for the last how many ever years we don't have space for you. We also recapture that M&O to be able to do that. And we should be able to capture additional M&O for out-of-district open enrollment at the high school level moving forward for the period of time that they're there. So it makes some sense to not only use capital, but also using some M&O, especially for the lease portion of this project. So with that, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve Design Modulars, Inc. as the vendor for IFB 23-014-27 modular classrooms for Micah Mountain, lease purchase options as presented.
I'll accept a motion. Mr. Aiken moves, Ms. Tippett, seconds. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, this item was reviewed in quite a bit of detail last board meeting, and I think we were pretty much all in agreement that it looked like a good way to go forward. So I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. I can't believe this is the last thing that I'm gonna have to.
It's garbage, Mrs. Anderson.
Literally. The next item on the agenda is IGA City of Tucson Waste Recycle Services. Mr. Carew.
President Anderson. For the final time, and members of the board. I will remember the lit set review, and we will forget that we are dealing with garbage as your last item 5 years from now. However, the business of the board is broad.
Yes.
And therefore we must deal with this as well. Mr. Jerry Wood, who he and Mr. Beam are at a safety conference actually, otherwise he'd be here to present this. I believe he spoke to this as well, and his idea of being able to enhance our trash pickup. We currently use Republic Service for our garbage pickup here, and we've had some hit or miss. Well, like all groups, finding drivers right now is just really difficult, and so that's part of the difficulty with this. But Mr. Wood had the idea and worked with Mrs. Kudos in exploring the possibility of saving some money by having the city of Tucson waste and recycle handle our city of Tucson schools, which would then allow us to amend the agreement with Republic Services for the county schools and realize some savings there, and also realize some cost savings by using the city of Tucson garbage service, waste and recycle service for our city schools. Fundamentally, that's what this is about, and this is simply entering into that IGA. Mrs. Kudos is here and can clean up any of the things that I may have missed in relationship to that. But with that, I'll just make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve the IGA with the City of Tucson for waste and recycle services as presented.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
I'll move.
Ms. Tippett moves, and
I'll second.
Mr. King seconds. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Tippett.
So Andrada technically is a city school, but it's not listed as which one? Andrada.
I believe that's correct, and Mrs. Kudos, correct me if I'm, so yes, it is, but it's not listed as services in part because of its location.
So am I to understand that the city of Tucson doesn't want to serve places within their city? I don't know.
I don't want to speculate too far, but without having confirmed with Mr. Wood, but I imagine that there's a differential because of its location, which would have the cost differential to be able to service that school with the city's waste recycle was not advantageous versus continuing to use Republic Services. I'm certain it would have changed the cost arrangements between those. The fact that the other city schools are in close location and be able to pick up relatively easy versus running down to Andrada to do that would have had a cost differential.
Right. Thank you.
Ms. Pratt.
Just to clarify, so Republic's services did do all of it, right? So that cost that's in there, is that the differential? Because I'm assuming that their contract would change if we're taking some out. Is that cost the differential, or that's not including that?
Mrs. Kudos, do you know the answer to that? So we would realize the savings.
Okay,
Yes,
Got it.
doing this, we should realize an improved service and an actualized savings.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other
That's the
comments?
intent.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. And the last item on the agenda is adjournment.
I'll move.
I will accept a motion to adjourn at 9:07, and Mr. Aiken moves and is seconded by.
No.
No, yeah.
Objection.
Can you,
I'll second.
Can you second your own? I feel like you should second.
As I say, I think you should second.
I'll second that. I'll second that emotion. Okay, so I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carried and the meeting is adjourned, and thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hello, guys. Hello, guys. All right, so today is Live Mix Wednesday. If this is your first time, if this is your first time joining us, welcome to Lily and Rose. I do a live custom mix for you guys every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. It is already available on the website. Just go to iwantglitter.com, click on today's deals. It's going to be right at the top. This is live mix number 70. Now, I was originally going to make kind of like a pink fuchsia burgundy maroony-ish color, and I shifted gears last minute because I was walking by the glitter and the yellow section just super jumped out at me. And we have been kind of working within these wintry fall vibes, all these dark colors and greens and reds and deep rich oranges and tones like that for the fall. So I just felt like the yellow just called to me and said, let's go left of curveball. And so we are going to make a beautiful yellow glitter today. It's going to be a chunky fine mix. It's got holographic, gemstone, and opalescent glitter.